Welcome to the United Way Difference, a program that discusses Oshkosh community needs and how local nonprofit agencies are supporting people in our area. United Way's focus in the areas of income, education, health, and volunteerism helps to build a stronger, more caring, and compassionate community. The United Way Difference is brought to you by the Oshkosh Area United Way.
Hi, I'm Sue Ponick, and I'm today with you to talk about United Way and some of the programs that we fund on the United Way Difference. My guest today is Tom Perry. Tom is the Executive Director of the the Winnebago County Literacy Council. And Tom, you've been in your job for a whole 4.5 months.
Yes, I have.
Tell us about the Literacy Council and maybe why a little bit you got into working in a nonprofit.
Sure. I've been a nonprofit executive for 32 years, and so this is what I know is how to run and what to do in nonprofits. I've come from a health and human services background in nonprofits, but I decided as I got later in life and my kids were out of the house that it was time to do something that was truly mission-based, and literacy is very important in our family. And so when this opportunity came up, I jumped right on it.
Okay. You talked about it being important in your family, but literacy as a community is very important.
Very important in the community. Depending on what study you look at, up to 30% of people in this area have a literacy difficulty in one form or another.
Wow. We're going to get into those forms, one form or another. But looking at the Literacy Council as a whole, what are some of the programs that you provide in the community? And if you want to just walk kind of through them, and then for what reasons you do them?
Sure. So what we mostly are known for and how we started was a one-on-one literacy program where we provide a tutor, an individual tutor for an adult learner who is deficit in the literacy area, whether it be reading, writing, understood communication, or all of the above.
Math as well?
Math we don't do as much of, but it does come into play because it's needed to function in society. So that's how we started, was the one-to-one literacy, and that's the bare bones of our program right now. So somebody who comes in and needs some help, we match them with a tutor, one of our volunteer tutors, and they set up a schedule that's convenient for both of them in order to facilitate the learning process.
And a little bit later on, we're going to talk about volunteer tutors and that
Sure.
relationship and how people might even be able to become a volunteer tutor.
Correct.
Okay. So I have to ask this question because why is it necessary for people to have a tutor, or why is there a deficit in their literacy?
Well,
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, but what are you hearing?
There are a lot of reasons, but one of the major reasons is that it really hasn't become something that has been focused on either throughout school or into adulthood. And we've come to accept that some people are just the way they are. And so there really hasn't been a focus.
When you say we're talking about not the Literacy Council.
Community as a general. There are individuals who, for whatever reason, had to drop out of school to help with a family business, couldn't continue on to school because of personal or health issues, or come to us from other countries that don't understand our language at all.
So could it be dyslexia and some other undiagnosed things as well?
Most certainly. And with adult learners, dyslexia is only something that really came into the forefront about 20 to 30 years ago. And it only has really received that kind of attention. So if you're talking about a 50 or a 60-year-old adult who may have never been diagnosed as dyslexic and was just labeled as having a learning disorder in school, they may be somebody that we can help as well.
Okay. You just gave me another question. I want to talk to you about assessments in just a few minutes. So, but before I ask you that question, what are some of the programs the Literacy Council provides?
So we have the one-on-one tutoring program. That's the bread and butter of what we do. But we also have a very successful family literacy program where we actually involve the parents and their children as part of the programming. So it's more of a group type setting, but it involves the family and their children. We do a session with just the family, and then we involve the children, and the children are a very important part of that learning to read and write process.
So do you have multiple families in the family literacy program at the same time?
At the same time, and as a matter of fact, we're bursting at the seams right now. It's so popular and well thought of that it's just one of those programs where we're now looking for additional space within the community to do this.
Okay. One of the cool things about that is one of the things United Way has been looking at is social connectedness. And that's just another one of those great examples of how a community can come together around a particular issue and connect families and connect individuals.
And it is very important, because what we actually see is that a lot of these families then develop relationships within themselves and their own group, and they rely on each other for child care so that somebody could go and get a job or go to a medical appointment without lugging along their children, or do those types of things. And so this little group has also become a community in themselves. But it's also important that we do this group in the community so that the community supports the literacy effort and supports these families.
Okay, so we've got the one-on-one tutoring, we have the family literacy program, and then what?
So then we have a program called Road to Work, where we help people, especially immigrants and refugees, find work here in the community. The unemployment rate is super low. We all know that. We all heard about employers that are looking for people to work. And we help people who are new to the country or new to the area find those jobs through various means. A lot of times they can't find jobs because they don't speak or understand the language real well. So we give them rudimentary lessons in learning certain things, find out what their skill interests are, and we work with them in finding and maintaining those positions.
Okay.
Another part of Road to Work is we actually do a certificate or a credentialing program where people who come to us from foreign lands actually have incredible backgrounds with their prior lives. They may be engineers. There are some doctors that we've dealt with, and they come to us and their credentials don't necessarily translate over to our standards.
Or they could possibly not even have them any longer
Or
because they're lost
Or they're
somewhere.
lost, correct. And so what we do is we help them translate those credentials or those degrees into things that can be recognized here in the United States. And so we've helped physicians become physicians. Right. We've helped engineers become engineers. And as you know, an engineering degree in this area is hugely sought after.
Right.
And so we help them with those things in order to work, so they don't have to come and work in a menial job in order just to make the ends meet. They can actually work in an area that they were trained in.
Right. Oh my God, how supportive that is, but also just how fulfilling that can be.
Very fulfilling, especially when you place somebody in a field that they were trained in.
Yeah. And you've got a new program at the Boys and Girls Club.
We do have a new program at the Boys and Girls Club.
I should say with the Boys and Girls
With the Boys and Girls
that?
Club, right. We're partnering with them for a program called Readers Cafe. And Readers Cafe is a program where we work with the children from ages 8 to 18. And what we do is we assess where they are. We do an assessment of where they are in their comprehension, their reading skills, their literacy skills in general. And then we go through this program in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club. And they do a lot of very wonderful things there. For instance, choral reading. Choral reading is a technique that you learn to read and learn through singing. And so we all sing, we all know how to sing, but we have to understand what it is that we sing. And choral reading has been found to really help that learning faster than normal teaching methods. And so at the end of this session of Readers Cafe, they actually put on a little performance, and it was well attended here in the community, and their parents and other community members come, and it's just really an incredible showcase. The interesting part is when we first started it 2 summers ago, we had 80 children involved, and this summer we had over 270. So it just blossomed overnight, and this coming year we are actually looking at what we can do to accommodate even more people if they're interested.
Wow. In 2 years, you've grown that much.
In 2 years, we've grown that much.
And isn't it cool to see kids excited about reading?
And they are very excited about reading. And afterwards, we do a post-assessment to see where they were from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer. And in 79% of all cases, reading and comprehension grew tremendously. There was no loss whatsoever, but there was improvement in 79% of all cases.
Wow. Wow. Those are the kinds of outcomes that communities need to hear about so that they know that these are programs that really work.
That is correct.
Right. So is the Reader's Cafe the same thing as the Reader's Theater?
The Reader's Cafe is the same thing as the Reader's
Okay.
Theater. The theater is the performance
Oh,
that is
that's
put
the-
on
okay.
right at the end of it. So during the program, not only are they doing the choral reading and all that, they're doing the Reader's Theater, they're preparing for their performance. And so they have their roles and they have to research and read for their roles and as part of that performance. So it's a really very interactive, group-oriented thing which facilitates that learning process even more.
So give me an example of what they've read.
Well, the group picked out, they actually had groups based on age, and they picked out their own performances and what it was that they were going to do. And they all had input in doing that. And I'm not entirely sure of what that was, but my understanding is that I think the 4th grade did something that was on the 8th grade level, and
Wow.
they chose to do that on their own. They were almost tried to be steered away from it, and the kids were like, nope, this is what we want to do, because it was a subject that interests them.
And I love it because it's participant driven, and that made them really work hard.
Yes, made them work very hard. They were very proud of it. And of course, we all know pride is what keeps us from doing things, and pride is what makes us do things.
Yeah, true.
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't thought about it like that, but
Right.
that's really true. Excuse me. So, Tom, you've been the executive director now for 4.5 months. And I'm going to start coughing in just a second. So I'm going to stop asking you too many questions so I can catch my breath. But you do have some goals that the Literacy Council has for the new direction for the Literacy Council.
Certainly. Some of our goals center around who we are. We've been in existence for 29 years, and of those 29 years, I'm not entirely sure the community really knows who we are or where we're located. When I got the job, I said to my wife, who is a literacy professional herself, hey, I'm going to be working for the Literacy Council, and she said, well, I know we have one, I'm not sure where it's at. That got right away into this is what we need to do to let the community know that we're here. So we're doing a lot more community-centered functions, focus on the community to say, hey, we're out here, we can help. As I said earlier, depending on what study you look at, up to 30% of our population, our community population now, is illiterate in one form or another. Because of that, we have to look at how we're going about doing things and getting the word out there that we're there. So we're going to do a lot of that type of thing.
Is there a lot of stigma attached to illiteracy?
Very much so.
And
a
how
lot
do you break that?
And that's the question that's out there. And I think one of the ways to break that is to let people know that we're there and that we can help, that it's going to be confidential, that it's going to be available for them, and that we are there to improve their lives. Literacy is directly related to poverty, and if we can improve literacy, we can improve poverty.
I know one of the things with our Dolly Parton Imagination Library program is to get parents reading to their children early so that they don't
Correct.
struggle when they get into school, and that they're reading at the grade level by 3rd grade, 4th grade. Right?
Correct.
And I think a lot of the people that we're talking about that maybe have some literacy problems now never were there, and they've probably struggled their entire life. And they've probably been not very welcoming to school, because why would I? I mean, I always get laughed at or teased, or I can't read if I don't want to read in front of people.
Exactly. And if the parents aren't welcoming to school, they won't advocate for their children in school. And if you don't advocate for your children in school, then your children don't exceed. And so those are the types of things that we also teach as part of our parenting classes is educational advocacy.
Okay.
And educational advocacy, as we all know, is very important nowadays.
Yeah. And somebody has to stand up for them.
Somebody has to stand
That's
up
right.
for your children.
Hey, we're going to go to a break.
Certainly.
And when we come back, we're going to finish our conversation with Tom Perry, the Executive Director of the Winnebago County Literacy Council.
It's not a charity, it's more than a charity. It's about helping people we live with. It's about being the type of person that the 6-year-old version of ourselves wanted us to be. It's about community and looking out for one another. It's about money, yes, but it's so much more than money. It's about friendship and common values. It's about opening doors when others are slammed shut. It's about giving kids a place to be kids and growing up knowing they live in a community that cares about them. It's about making sure that everyone gets to see the dentist, because we want to make sure that they have every last tooth in those smiles. Ultimately, that's it. It's about the smiles, old smiles and new smiles. It's about us, all of us, our community living united, because great things happen when we live united. Will you join us?
Welcome back to United Way Difference. My guest today is Tom Perry. He's the Executive Director of the Winnebago County Literacy Council. And we were just talking, or we were leading into the conversation about the Literacy Council has been around for 30 years.
Right.
I know that we've been funding the program for 15 or 20 years, but I didn't realize that you existed that much longer.
Right.
So, wow.
So the Literacy Council was essentially formed in the early 1980s when the Altrusa Club and the Oshkosh Public Library got together to address literacy in the community, and they pretty much started that one-to-one tutoring program. Later in the mid-'80s, when the economic crisis occurred around 1985, the need for employees to become more literate in order to get jobs was clearer than ever. And so the Literacy Council was formed in 1989 as a reaction and as a response to those needs that occurred during the 1980s. And so since it was formed in 1989, next year, 2019, is our 30th year, and we're very excited about that. And we have a lot of activities planned for that.
Good. We'll be looking for your calendar of events.
Yes.
One of the things that, and you don't know this, but years ago, United Way used to always make a campaign video, and it came from the national organization, and one of them was called Letters from the Heart. And it was a segment in this video where a gentleman went to the Literacy Council so that he could learn to read, but also that he could learn to write. And his goal was, and I'm crying by this time, but his goal was to be able to write a love letter to his wife. And he reads the love letter to his wife. I'm going to start crying now again. But it's just such a touching moment that this was his goal. And he talked about his struggle as a student and that, he hid it for so many years that nobody ever knew.
Right.
And so it really can impact somebody's life.
And that is people that we see almost every day, is that individuals who have been hiding their deficits and getting away with it at street literacy, and they have come to us for reasons just like you said. I had somebody that I talked to the other day. They come to us because in order to get a promotion, they need to read this specific manual at work and understand it. Or somebody came to us and said, I get confused while riding the buses because I don't understand, or I can't read where to get off, and I know, but I would like to know what it is and why it's there. And so we can be very specific in an individual's teachings in order to do what it is that they want to do. And so yes, if somebody comes to us and says they want to write a love letter, we would work as that goal to get them to write that love letter.
Right. And that's the other thing that is so cool, because it's participant driven. It's self-determination of what is their goal.
Exactly.
So you can do the workplace literacy, you can do the life literacy in a sense of the person riding the bus or the man who wants to write the love letter.
Exactly.
And that's really cool. Let's talk a little bit about if somebody wants to contact the Literacy Council. And we talked about the fact that there's stigma, and you are such a welcoming place that I want to say right now that people just need to say, I need to do this, and they'll find me a tutor, and it will be confidential, but I can set goals and I can do some great things. But how do they get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with us is either contact us through a website, which is winlit.org, winlit.org.
Okay, I think that's going to come up on the screen now a little bit.
Good, or to call us at 920-236-5185. That's my direct number.
Okay.
happy to talk to anybody and refer them up to our volunteer coordinator, Angie, who will take their information and get them matched with an appropriate tutor.
So when you talk about matching with an appropriate tutor, and earlier you had talked about doing an assessment. So does every person that comes in get assessed?
Every person that comes in gets assessed, and the assessment varies depending on what their individual need is. First, we talk to them. What is it that you want to learn here? If someone wants to read, write, all of the above, we write an assessment and figure out where they're at, because a lot of people understand English better than they can speak it. And so some people say, I just want to speak better, I just want to read better, and we develop an assessment, figure out what level they're at, and then devise an appropriate educational program for the tutor to work in that area. You don't want a tutor to start with the ABCs if a person knows the ABCs.
Right. So how do you match the person with a tutor?
So we really do a good interview with our tutors to figure out what our tutors are able to do as well. And based on the assessment of the individual, and we take into account a lot of factors, as you know, with some of the religions that are in the area, we don't necessarily match male to female if that's an important part of what an individual wants. We sometimes match individuals. They say, I want a much more mature individual to work with me rather than a college student.
Okay.
We look to make sure we can try and make those matches occur.
So I know that this is kind of a trite question, but what's your typical volunteer?
Well, my typical volunteer is somebody who is generally about 45 and on up. A lot of individuals who are retired are looking to do something with their lives after their retirement, be meaningful, purposeful, that type of thing. I do get a lot of college students. Being in a university town, that's very beneficial. But generally it's an adult professional, a lot of retired teachers, and those are the types of tutors we typically see.
So how long does a match usually go on?
We've had matches that have been going on for 5-7 years. Matches go for 6 months or less. Depends on the need of the individual, but some of the individuals that are in our program have had a tutor for 5 years or more. I remember talking to somebody a few weeks ago about how they've had somebody since they were 12 years old, and now this individual has enrolled into our military and is very proud of this. And this family was talking about the individual they've been tutoring as if they were a child, and they were very proud of where they started and where they're at right now, and how this individual wants to give back to our country because they gave so much to him.
And and if they weren't in his life, he might not have qualified to be in the military.
Correct.
Or she.
Correct. Yes. So it was a very monumental, and it was one of those tear-jerker moments when they were talking to me about that. And the volunteer is just one member of the family, and when we held the volunteer appreciation event, the spouse came, and they were, just the way they talked about their learner was just an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, I love your volunteer recognition event. That's the best thing. I hear the best stories there.
Yes.
We were talking about people volunteering. So is that the only way they can volunteer is to become a tutor?
No, we have lots of other things. There's always things that need to be done with a small nonprofit organization. We need help with the community events that we go to. We need help just with clerical work. We need help, and you name it, we need help. And of course, there's always help through financial means as well.
So, oh shoot, you said something that made me think about this. Oh, for tutors, you just don't say, oh, you're a tutor now.
No, we go through finding a really good match for that individual.
But do they get trained, the tutors?
The tutors get trained. We actually provide a base level of training and then provide up to 120 hours of additional training based on the tutor's desire or needs as well.
Okay, and then over time, how do you assess the student to make sure that they're progressing?
We do other assessments and tools, but really it's up to the participant. When you do a lot of the standardized tests around here for those assessments, it's based a lot towards school children. It doesn't translate well to adults. The true measure we found over all the years is whether the learner thinks they're learning and whether the learner says that they're learning, and then the success of that learner.
Okay. So it's really, again, goes back to participant-driven and whether or not they feel
Very
they're getting
participant.
benefit from the program.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so if I've already asked you with the typical tutor, what's your typical student like?
Well, the typical student generally is somebody who is new to the country. either as an immigrant or a refugee. And the community here has been hosting immigrants and refugees since the early 80s. And so that's a typical person who come through the door that needs a full array of services. But we do have individuals that are termed AB learners, who are the functioning illiterate individuals in the community who need some help with reading or writing or those types of things to help with the job. And we have people that live independently on their own, may have been considered or gone through school, as you said earlier, as learning disabled, and we're helping them through their adulthood doing that. So there's a wide range of people that we serve, and we're happy to serve anybody who comes through the door.
And now you got the kids at the Boys and Girls Club.
And now we have the kids at the Boys and Girls Club, and we have been going a little bit more into children's services.
Okay. When you talk about people, refugees and immigrants who are coming in, so my guess is that English is not their first language.
Correct.
But many of them do come with English skills.
Correct.
But they may not be able to read.
Correct.
English.
So a lot of people come that understand much more than they can speak or read. And so because of that, we have to cater their individual learning based on what their abilities and skills are. So it is really interesting talking to individuals like that. And by the way, they bring me lots of treats because that's how they repay their gratitude.
Well, because there's no charge for this.
And there's no charge for any of our services. And so they come to us and they understand. And it's great talking to them. They understand what I'm saying. But then when they answer questions back, you can see where the difficulty is and where the learning needs to occur.
Okay. I'm going to move into some of the statistics that I found on your website.
Sure.
And I like your website because there's a lot of good information on it. So in 2017, because of course you don't have 2018 numbers yet, it's not the end of the year, you have some remarkable results that you've experienced. So do you want to just touch on those a little bit? And
Sure.
they're going to show up on the screen too for people.
So we touched the lives of 286 learners in our one-to-one tutoring program. And there were over 300 participants in our English classes. And so that is a tremendous amount for being a small nonprofit organization. We have 81 people in the Road to Work program. So that meant 81 people we help get a job, get a better job, or do the credentialing, help them with the credentialing process. And we trained more than 136 tutors. As a matter of fact, so far this year, I think we're on pace to be over 150.
Wow.
And then of those tutors, they donated over 3,000 hours last year, and it's probably going to be about 10% more this year. So it's an amazing group. We're very volunteer driven, and we really appreciate the help that our volunteers give us.
Okay. I wanted, in the last minute we have left, we want to talk about the Spellbound event.
Oh, certainly.
Because we know that you get United Way funding, but that doesn't cover all your costs.
Correct. We do have to fundraise just as every nonprofit does. And in the beginning of April, we hold a spelling bee called Spellbound, where we do a typical spelling bee, and the winner takes home bragging rights. There's corporate challenges, there's individual champions. It's an event that people really take very personally, and a lot of competition when it happens. But it's our signature fundraising event.
But it's not like an individual; it's a team, right?
It's a team.
It's a team
challenge. Yes.
Well, Tom, this has been fascinating. Thank you. Welcome to the nonprofit world in the United Way realm. We really appreciate having you, and we appreciate you watching our program. Stay tuned for future programs. Thank you.